Hi, everybody. I am Susan Hopkins. I am the Executive Director of the Merit Center, working with Dr. Shanker, and a great honor to work with TMC. So, I want to tell you a story today. It's interesting how my work is, it's all I do is Self-Reg, and I'm working on the courses with Stuart. We video on the courses. I teach them, I present, I train, I consult. Everywhere I go, I seem to be talking about self-regulation and learning more every day. Like, I'm just so honored. It just is. I learn so much every day, and the more I learn, the more I realize I have to learn, which I think happens to all of us. We think it's really simple at first. It's really funny because you start learning about the 5 steps, and oh, great, yeah, sure. 5 steps, 5 domains, and no problem, of course. It's, whole child, and sure, it sort of makes sense. And, a lot of us, it's just sort of a natural thinking for. And then, 5 steps, oh, sure, read and reframe behavior, recognize stressors, reduce the stressors, of course, and then reflect and respond. Sounds really easy. So then you dive in, and it's a little bit about stress and the brain. And we've probably heard Stuart speak and tell his stories about things like secondary alteriality and trying to remember what all these different things are. But basically, it comes down to self-regulation is about stress and stress responses and the management of energy. And we're trying to think about what we need to do to have our kids and ourselves as healthy, well, and that in that common alert place. And then you start to learn more. And it gets actually this weird thing happens because you get a bit overwhelmed. It's true. You reach this point. I've watched people. We've now got about 120 people in our courses, and we've got lots of them reach this moment where you get insecure, and I do too. You have that sort of imposter syndrome because you start to realize. Like, we've got 120 hours in our courses. You start to realize, oh my, there's so much to it. And you ask Stuart anything, and he reels off, like science. He's like he's just constantly learning. Like, it's not, if you know it today, you do not know it next year. You can't, because Stuart doesn't even know it next year because things are changing that fast thanks to technology and our understanding of the brain body science, right? So, but you reach this point where you get a little bit insecure, and it, because it feels so complex, and it feels like no matter what you do, you're never going to learn it all. And that's true. And it's true, but it's a bit of a, I've come to the third place now, where I still feel that I still get overwhelmed at times, and I still find that I get asked things or put on the spot and I don't know, or Stuart will say something to me and just flip off a new term, and like I'm off to Google looking it up, and here I am supposed to be somebody that's teaching others, and I'm learning as I go so much. I really do. But then you reach this point where all of a sudden it starts to feel simpler again. And I can't explain it. It's not that the complexity of the science goes away, but you begin to realize that, okay, first of all, these 5 domains are not just coincidental. It's not just, oh, nice whole child. It's a dynamic system. You cannot focus on just one. You need to look at all 5. And then when you do, it's the whole picture. And we have the stressors with it. And there's so much science within that. But there's all sorts of things pinging off one of another. And when you understand that, it opens up new doors. The 5 steps seem very simple. Us at TMC, we know they're not, because there's actually a lot to it. Most people skip to give me the strategy. And until you really get that read and reframe, and then identify those stressors, like really identify what you don't know, and there's an awful lot to it. But actually, in a way, it also gets easier because you go with it as a process, and you realize that, okay, there is no perfect ending. You cannot do it all. Even when you know it, you'll still screw it up every day, and lessons learned and whatever, right? It's a process, but it changes your way of thinking, and it's those questions. Stuart talks about why and why now, and I'm going to tell another story in a separate segment on that. But those are really profound things. We're not trying to change behavior. We're trying to understand why. Why is this going on? What are the roots of it? What's beneath it? And reframing, is this stress behavior is misbehavior. So much of what we treat as misbehavior is really about underlying stressors, and when we understand that, we see things differently. I had an elder teach me the concept of soft eyes, and it was like empathy, compassion, all combined. But we look at somebody with soft eyes, and that's a gift back to us. It reduces our own stress, and all of a sudden the solutions become clear, and we look at it as a process and a dance and something that continues forever. that's my thought.